Question 4. In what ways does your media product use,
develop or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? So before we started any planning, editing, filming or anything like that, we first started to research different crime documentaries. So I looked at Murdered by My Boyfriend by the BBC, Kids Who Kill by Channel 5 and Sex Gangs by Channel 4. By looking at different industries, we were able to see what the different companies looked at and see how they did the documentaries differently.
Similar to Penny, I researched 3 different documentaries separate from what she looked at. I looked at Police Under Pressure, The Virgin Killer and Countdown to Murder. Again, they were all crime documentaries, but they looked at crime from a different perspective. For example, The Virgin Killer was very specific, it was one specific case and one-off documentary, whereas Countdown to Murder was a series which was similar to what we wanted to do. And Police Under Pressure looked at crime but from a different perspective, from the police's perspective and how they saw crime.
Yeah, looking at the different documentaries, we realised it was really important first to look at where the perspectives came from. So like Alice said in The Virgin Killer, that was more or less from the actual killer's perspective, as he had done YouTube videos about his killings, and it was just like his videos and then a narrator on top of that. But we really wanted to separate ourselves from this person, and then the main aim of our documentary was to find who was at fault and who was to blame. So we wanted to do it through different interviews and a narrator as well, and that's a convention that we found in our things.
Yeah, a voiceover and a narrator is something we found throughout all the documentaries we looked at, even with the different perspectives, the different programmes from the different channels and whatever, a narrator was on every one of it, and I think it really helped to tell the story and follow the audience through the documentary itself and let them know what was going on, and I think our piece wouldn't have been the same without a voiceover.
Yeah, just to clarify certain things that someone in an interview might look over, a narrator was a really useful tool to do that. Narration was something that we definitely developed within our own piece, and we kept it a real broad accent, that it wasn't really regional to anywhere, so it was relatable to everybody. And because we really wanted to have that professional feel and use the convention to create a recognisable convention of a documentary within a film for the audience.
Definitely. I think in things like Countdown to Murder, which is something I looked at, during the interview process when they were interviewing people, we saw a lot of close-ups, close-up shots of the facial expressions and what have you, and that's something we definitely wanted to include also.
Since our case wasn't actually a real case and we'd created it, it was really important for us to try and capture some emotion and some raw feelings into it to really make it believable and make it seem like these people had actually gone through this. And that's not just down to us, it's a credit to our actors as well, which we're really impressed with. Close-ups, I feel like we developed it, but we also challenged the conventions, because the close-ups were generally on the actors within the pieces, but then we challenged it by we did a close-up of the turtle toy, and we did a close-up of its face, and that really is kind of like an ironic shot. It's usually focused on the adults that are all grieving or talking about this terrible incident, but then the close-up on the turtle really symbolises how it's at the root of it, it's a child and it's happened to that child, and it's the child that's really gone through this emotional state, and so it really tied it back to the child, which we felt was really important for us to do. Another thing that we found was the establishing shots. These took about 70% of the footage that was used, I'd say, in all of the things, especially because documentaries, when you're filming something that's a factual event that's happened in the past, it's often quite difficult to find footage to talk about the events, especially when there's a voiceover going on. So establishing shots were used to establish the area of the crime, where it happened, the area these people lived in, and also different close-ups of like park swings and things like that, especially when it was in Kids Who Kill, because that was about children. So the close-ups of the swings and it was quite eerie as there was no child on it, but it was still swinging. So it symbolises, you know, the child's gone, it's left its place of play, and now that place is abandoned and become a sinister thing. So that was something that we really wanted to include in our thing.
Looking at this mysterious image was something we definitely wanted to include in our documentary, and I think we really developed this idea by using the toys in the garden, which represented, you know, where the case we were looking at supposedly happened. And I think it was definitely a shot, you know, we did over and over to make sure it was perfect, but definitely came out well and was one of our best features of the film.